wish that I could be forever this young, not afraid to close my eyes. Life's a game and it's meant for everyone, and love is the prize. Now you say, wake me up.
Just remind us a little bit about your family, where you're from, and catch us up to date.
Yeah, so I guess most of you guys, and if you don't know, I'm from Tallahassee, Florida, right here. Actually, I grew up the north side of town, but the stick side, like the all the way almost to Georgia. Meridian Road, State Road 12, dirt roads, bikes, hardworking family. And had a great childhood and not really understanding what hardworking in a place of poverty was until I got older. And then I moved to the south side of town and saw the inner city side of poverty, and also seeing the countryside of poverty, if you will. So that's where I'm from, Tallahassee, Florida. I'm a singer-songwriter. As a profession, I guess, and I think the most important things that I am is a husband and a father, and just trying to figure out exactly how to live purposefully. Kind of, what you're talking about here is just I think our purpose is, as all people, to be salt, and I think salt keeps, it preserves, you know what I mean? And so I think that we have to do our best at figuring out daily how to keep and preserve and to be a light in that regard. So I think that's kind of me in a nutshell, kind of. I love playing all styles of music, and I just love being able to give to people the way God has been blessing me to do so for as long as He has. So it's been good.
You came and led us in worship. It was awesome.
Thanks.
6 weeks worth of fantastic. But my guess is your primary audience is a secular audience.
Yeah, I would say just the very mainstream side of music is where my writing and my performances kind of live. My mom, Rosa, she is my worship leader, always has been. Has kind of taught me she did teach me that worship isn't about the songs you're singing. Worship is an extension of everyday life, of how you gather yourself in the morning, to how you give yourself to those around you. That I think that parable of the rocky road and good soil and the thorns, I think that is a good example of what worship should be, that we should be every day trying to figure out and make sure that we're not the rocky soil, that we're not the thorny place, because I think at every point we can be that. And so what she explained to me and what she has taught me is that worship is that the congregational worship that we do at church is an extension of prayer. And so that'll always be a part of me. But my bread and butter is making music for folks. When I first started making music, I was a quote unquote Christian rapper who was still trying to figure out his way. And that kind of happened right around the time I gave my life to Christ, or somewhere around 2003. And I started to get really fed up, and I wasn't becoming creative anymore by only listening to Christian hip hop. And it was becoming very frustrating because I wanted to grow as an artist. But more than that, I wanted to grow as a person. I wanted to grow in my walk with this Redeemer that is so amazing. And what I was always getting was get saved, get saved, get saved inside of the music that was given to us. So one day I just stopped listening to music completely. And I was only listening to like maybe worship music and NPR. And I was outside, like I said, grew up in the sticks, so I could yell as loud as I wanted to. And I was talking to God, and I was like, what do you want me to do? And he brought me to Isaiah 58. Mm-hmm. And to be honest with you, I think that's the first time I've ever actually read it. Actually, it spoke like heavy to me. And then he gave me this quote to write for those who know and write to those who don't. Mm. And that changed my writing style completely. Because my writing style at that time was what I was listening to. Get saved, give your heart to Christ. But it changed my writing style to, I go through a lot of stuff. I want a girlfriend. Mm. I want money one day. I'm not really sure what dreams are at the moment. How do you figure out life? These coming of age things that we're all talking about. Mm. And I realized something, that being a believer in redemption through Yeshua isn't absent from the rest of my life. Like, I feel like sometimes we feel like it's absent from our profession, it's absent from family, and it's only recognized on Sunday morning or on Wednesday. And I come from also a culture that has a subculture that maybe some of us know as church culture. And we dedicate our lives to church culture, and we're only fulfilled when we're on stage. We're only fulfilled when we're in a meeting doing something for the church body, for the community in the church body, for someone in the church body. And when you get home, your marriage is like weird and crazy. Your kids are weird and crazy. Your friends are weird and crazy. No one knows you're a believer on a basketball court because you don't show it, or either you don't go to the basketball court because you're so far removed from culture that you only live inside of church culture. So that's where I feel like God was kind of teaching me in my career, and it kind of blossomed out into the rest of my life. I think I love the most about the songs I play, mixing the styles, always talking about love. Love is everything. It's the umbrella to life. Like, you had a good day because someone showed you love. You had a bad day because someone didn't show you love. There's people out there that don't have love inside their narrative, so they make certain decisions. I play hip hop and soul and singer-songwriter and reggae and kind of mix those together. And so what I love is when I turn on the lights at a show, I see brown people and white people and different colors of just people, different incomes, different ages, all singing together. And I would like to think that I'm kind of helping with, bringing apart, some kind of change. Folks that love singer-songwriter music may look over and be like, yo, I am singing and dancing next to some hip-hop heads. You know what I mean? And it just brings together like a different part of change.
That helps you when you think about activism.
Yeah.
So being actively involved in trying to seek justice.
Yeah.
Giving people what it is that they deserve. Has your experience in music helped you even when it comes to activism? Does the question even make sense?
It completely makes sense.
Okay.
I think musicians and artists and songwriters are prophets of activism. Like, when you think about even to like Vietnam War, and you think about all the music that came out about coming together in peace. When you think about different, like prohibition, when you think about all these different things that kind of happened in our world, and all this music that came out and talked about it, music and artists definitely have a platform to allow people to say something that they never heard before. And I think it's your job as an artist or as a creative, as a writer, to make a better change popular. You know what I mean? Yeah. Music has allowed me to travel. It's allowed me to be around different thinkers. It's allowed me to be around different cultures and different languages. And all that is aided in kind of developing like a love and developing me unlearning all the prejudices that I have. Realizing my first time going to Europe and getting on a train and seeing African guys of darker complexion than me walk on, and I immediately grabbed my wife's purse. That is not a black and white thing. That is a prejudice that tons of people have based on hues, based on where you are, based on music and TV culture that you watch. I've been able to see those different prejudices in my life and see how they react. Being on the opposite side of industry where I know what was said while they was writing the worship songs that we all sing. I know how those songs became hits. You know what I mean? Like, knowing some of those underlying things that the general public of that like arts that we were talking about earlier doesn't really see in Christian music or see in mainstream music, definitely opens your eye to, you know, I have some friends that are mainstream rappers, and then after making a song, to see the president of the label come down and just to paint the picture of you. So we got a 28-year-old rapper who just wrote a song about like what's going on in the culture, trying to illustrate for folks. And then you have a 70-year-old president of the label whose whole family has been in music forever, white guy that probably doesn't know the streets in the place that this rapper is talking about right now. And then to hear the A&Rs and everyone at the table say, well, you know, to make this sell, we need to add a bit more of this and a bit more of this and a bit more of this, a few more of these words that we won't say right now, to make this sell, to make this proper. You know what I mean? I think knowing some of those things definitely has developed my take on activism. I feel like it is completely what the word is saying. It's being active. It is actively working on a change inside not just your community, but for people. I think when we're not active and we stay inside whatever culture we're in, we stay inside our community, our family, then what happens is we build this echo chamber of everybody that shops how we shop, lives where we live, eats how we eat, talks how we talk, dress how we dress. And so all you have there is just you. All you have there is your thoughts, your personality. And I think music has definitely opened that up for me, where I can get different personalities at the table, different thoughts, figuring out like what's going on. And that's definitely shaped my activism.
Impressed with you as you've helped just inform me. Here's some things that you could do. Here's some things that are going on here in Tallahassee that can help us draw attention to some important justice issues in there. From your perspective, how does a Christian, how does a believer, what does it look like for us to say we want to join in with this person, organization, et cetera, but without endorsing everything?
Yeah.
Maybe does that question make sense?
It makes
How do I
perfect
support
sense.
something grander without?
It makes perfect sense. I think before I answer this, I'll answer it with this. I think one of the coolest activists in the scriptures that we can pull from is a Daniel. And those Israelite boys who are, it's a great example. They're taken from their culture, taken from their homeland, put inside the Babylonian culture. And you know what they did? They, when you read, when you look at what they're saying, through a physical lens, because I believe sometimes we're a little bit too spiritual, a little bit too physical, and when you just look at it like this, like Daniel didn't build a subculture inside of the Babylonian culture. He engaged the Babylonian culture and still kept his beliefs. In fact, his engaging the culture with his beliefs showed amazing differences. Like just all the way, just going back to how they ate when they first got there. It was like, look, we're gonna eat like this, and we're gonna do this, and then they ended up being healthier, better, brighter, smarter, faster, because they realize, what are we feeding these guys? And you can take that into philosophy standpoint. Like, what are we feeding ourselves? Like, if you were sitting at the table, if Daniel never came to that table to demonstrate how he was eating physically, spiritually, mentally, then the rest of the table wouldn't have been introduced to that. You know what I mean? I think that Christians, we should take Daniel's example in engaging the culture. Being a doctor, being a mailman, being a plumber, being a stay-at-home dad, being a stay-at-home mom is not absent from the gospel of Christ, the gospel of love that he shared. You know what I mean? Yeah. In fact, I feel like if we were to ask God and go to him in prayer and go to him sincerely with every decision we made as a doctor, maybe we would speak differently and recommend things differently to our patients. As a mailman, as a plumber, as a dentist. You actually have a dentist at your church. I don't do any name dropping right now, but the reason why I actually go to him is because we went to him and we said, such and such happened, and he said, you know what, God actually made your teeth to do this, so you could just wait and you don't have to pay me to fix it. That was a game changer to me. I was like, I like this guy. The reason why is because a lot of times, especially in just a money-driven capitalistic world, man gets tied up in not just religion and church, but we get tied up in politics. We get tied up in schooling, and we look out for those that we want to look out for, and we forget those that we forget. We forget those that aren't in our circle, you know? I think Christians should think about more than their circle. I think too many times, you know, we want a seat at the table to speak, but we get to the meeting late. And then when we get to the meeting, we want to control the conversation. We need to come to the table of justice when it's time to meet. We need to listen to everyone at the table of justice when it's time to listen. And we need to speak when it's time for us to speak. And I think that Daniel showed us that so well. You know, just, I don't want to go through the whole like book of Daniel, but seriously, I think if you like, let's look and watch this guide of how Daniel was this activist in a culture that that he didn't feel like he had to pull away from. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's how we do it. I think that's how we engage the system. I think we as believers should be the first to be thinking about humane justice. I think we should be the first to be thinking about our planet. I think we should be the first to be thinking about things that salt needs to preserve. I think we should be the first to be thinking about places that light needs to be shined. And I think we have to educate ourselves as believers in our city, in our community, in our hometowns. And it's gonna be like this circle of remembering, because if you're only around people that look like you, you're not going to remember to look out for people who don't look like you. Speaking to a friend of mine, she's a mother, a white woman, and her concern kind of during this time that the world is shaking in everybody's eye view, because it's on social media and the news and all these things happening. She was saying, like, Royce, like, I don't think I'm racist. Can you tell me why do some people are making me feel that way? And what have I not been seeing, you know? Anyways, we had a beautiful conversation, but there was a part in the conversation where I just wanted to, that this is the example I want to give. If you're kind of around the same people all the time. So when I put my son in school, he goes to a great school. One of the things I have to look out for from my experience is representation. When I was growing up, to be quite honest with you, I didn't think that Black people were very smart, because I saw the opposite of who's teaching me, who is an authority, who's cleaning up, and kind of attention that's given in class. You know, nobody's telling me these things. Nobody's in my ear saying, hey, Royce, you're in 3rd grade. Let me tell you that nobody likes Black people. That's not what's happening. What's happening is what you see, the representation, from the magazine aisle to the books inside the school library. So anyways, what I was telling her is, when I put Levi into school, one of the things that my wife and I have to do is we go to their, each classroom sometimes has like little libraries set up. We go to the little school library and we look through all of the books, and we want to see how many books have Black faces in them. And when we get to the conclusion that there's not enough, then we go buy books to give to the school. So when Levi is looking through these books, he also sees people, so he understands that I guess these people are valuable too, because I see more books about them as well. And so when I was speaking to her, I was saying, like, I think as a believer, we have to be thinking about people like this, you know? And so I asked her, I said, you know, when you dropped your young baby off to school, do you have to, for a second, think, is there some representation there for her to realize that her red hair is beautiful and everything about her is awesome and she is valuable and worthy of time? You know what I mean? And she said, no, I don't have to think about that. And I was like, I think that is where we as believers have to be, because we are believers to shining light and being salt. We have to be there for people who are left out, people who, you know, Isaiah 58 talks about that, you know, the homeless person, the widow, the oppressed. The Bible paints such a beautiful picture about looking out for the oppressed. To be honest with you, this answer is gonna be a little deep, because there is just a complex layout, a foundation for church in general. Because I could say, you know, the church does a good job at reaching out when we have the time and the resources to reach out to the underserved communities and different things like that, regardless of color, but mostly just reaching out to those who are just underserved, especially financially, widows, moms, the homeless. I think what we need to think about as a church body is, who are we around? I feel like we've heard this so much that we think that hearing it is enough and maybe doing it once is enough. Like, who's sitting at your dinner table? That doesn't mean like, hey, come over for dinner. That means like communion. You know what I mean? That means that I am learning you. I am trying to understand you. I want to know more about you. And that doesn't just happen. Like, learning about someone doesn't just happen. We have busy lives. What it might take is for a structured order plan of saying, you know what? We don't have enough of these people in our lives, and we know nothing about them. And we can't expect the church to just bust in a bunch of Black people or bust in a bunch of Asian people or whoever so we can be around them on a Sunday morning. We can't expect the church to do that. We have to say, pick up the phone or reach out and stand out and invite those into our homes and understand them, talk to them, and do it again and again. It might take just, for a wife or a husband or a couple to say, like, you know what, every third Thursday, we need to have somebody different in our home and talking to them. And maybe the same person over and over and over and over and over. I think that will help start change. But it's a lot more complex than eating at the table. It's actually giving that effort to dig into someone, to understand where their needs are. I think Wildwood needs to hear who is in your circle. I think the closest friend that you have can change your AC at your house. I have 4 friends I can think about right now that they can be over to my house and they don't have to ask about moving the thermostat. They'll just move it.
Ooh, those are fighting words for me, man.
Those are your closest friends.
Yeah.
When you think about it. Now take it to the church. The ones who make the decisions in the church are the ones who can change the thermostat. Think about that in a philosophy way. The ones who make decisions in an organization or a business or a community of people are the ones that can change the atmosphere in the room. And if no one is thinking about changing the atmosphere in the room to focus on where Christ has told us to focus, on the fasting that he desires, like Isaiah 58 says, like, I don't want you to tear your clothes and throw up ashes, and you're praying a whole bunch, and I hear it. Why haven't you seen nothing's changed? Like, the type of fasting I want is to set the oppressed free, to give clothes to those who need it, to give food to those who need it, and do not turn down your kin. Do not turn down your family, you know? And I think that goes even deeper than skin, because we as believers believe that we're brothers, you know? And I think we have to think about all those things, you know?
Is there anything here in Tallahassee that we can say, you would say, check this out?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that learning to want to help is not actually helping. It's learning how to help. And once you learn how to help, then you can help. So I think that's something we have to do. You know what I mean? But there's actions that you can take, simple actions that you can take while learning how to help, you know? Showing up. Simply just showing up. I'm a pretty busy person throughout the plethora of things that I do, and I love my family time. One of the main reasons that I decided to show up to the protest, to show up to city council meetings, to be in that room, is for folks that might think protest means riot, to put it into that. I know some folks think, because of my platform and the music that I play that we talked about earlier, I know if someone sees me at a protest and I'm like, yo, it's safe, come out, they'll be like, okay, cool, you know? So that's one of the reasons that I'm doing that. Like I said earlier, like you might not really need to know what's happening with our commissioners and what decisions that they are making because of whatever reason, but Southside is yelling out for something. There's not and you need to be a part of that, you know, to show up, because your purpose doesn't start until you show up. I'll give you just a biblical example really quick. I think it's really cool. Like when the prophet showed up to anoint David as king, David wasn't there. And then in the scripture, we know that David was a shepherd. So I imagine he could have been, you know, outside in the backyard, or he could have been far away, you know, moving the sheep around. But the scripture says that the prophet said, go get him, and we're not going to move until he comes. And in my thought pattern, I'm thinking, like, if he's outside like a few yards away, they're not going to wait that long. But they're still not going to move. They're still not going to make a decision. Like, nothing's going to happen until he gets here. But if the wealth of Jesse was his sheep are like a day's trip away, 2 days trip away, they weren't gonna move until David got there. So again, like I would say, show up, like our purpose is to stand by those and be salt, to be a light in a dark place. If you're afraid of a riot, guess what? If more people who don't want to riot and only want to protest show up, it's going to be a protest. If more people who want to riot show up, it's going to be a riot. And to be honest with you, my complete thoughts on that is, I'll say the very same thing that Martin Luther King said. A riot is the language of the unheard.
Yeah.